My name is Sophie Fowler, and when I was 34 years old, I learned just how much a single piece of paper can cost a man. That man was Raymond Albright, the father who adopted me. He found this out at his own 65th birthday party, standing in front of 60 guests with a microphone in his hand and a cake burning behind him. He lifted his glass and said the words he had been saving for weeks. He told the room that I was not really his, that he had simply forgotten to cross my name out of the will. People laughed. Glasses clinked. A woman by the window said it was just like Raymond to be so honest. Everyone was laughing except for me, because they had no idea what was already folded inside my purse, or what I had signed at 9 o'clock that very morning, or why my hands were not shaking at all, while the laughter filled that beautiful room. I was 5 years old when the Albrights brought me home. I still remember the smell of their car, and the way Diane held my hand with both of hers, like I was something she had been waiting a long time to receive. For a while, things were warm. She bought me a yellow coat and took me to her garden club. The women there called me a gift and said Diane was so brave for taking me in. She had wanted a baby for years and couldn't have one. So she decided that saving a child would fill the empty place inside her. I understand that now. She didn't adopt a daughter so much as she adopted a story she could tell people. Her warmth was real, but it only showed up when someone was watching. I learned early to stand still and let people look at me. To a small child, being admired feels very much like being loved, and I could not yet tell the difference. When I was 8, Diane got pregnant. Spencer was born in March with Raymond's chin in Diane's eyes and a blanket with his name sewn on it before he ever took his first breath. I loved him at first. I thought having a brother would make me feel like I truly belonged. But something shifted in that house slowly, the way seasons change without you noticing. The photographs on the walls changed first. New pictures appeared with only 3 people in them. Then the seating at dinner changed. There were 5 matching chairs at the table and 1 old folding chair kept in the hall closet. Nobody announced it. Diane simply began setting that chair at the corner of the table near the kitchen door. One night, I tried to sit in an empty regular chair, and she put her hand gently on my shoulder and told me in front of everyone to take the folding chair. I was 8 years old. I took it. I sat in that chair for the next 10 years, every holiday and every birthday, feeling the cold metal against the backs of my legs, telling myself it was just a chair. Raymond was hard to understand because he was almost never home. He sold insurance, played golf, and came back tired. He thought fatherhood meant paying for things and being thanked. With Spencer, it was different. He played catch in the backyard and let him ride in the front seat. But with me, he was just a signature on school forms he never asked about. I found out the truth about how he saw me when I was 10. I had come downstairs for a glass of water and heard my name from a hallway. He and his brother were watching a game with the sound low. His brother asked about my future, about college savings. Raymond laughed. Not a cruel laugh, just a careless one, the kind you use when talking about something that doesn't really concern you. He said I was Diane's project, not his. Then he went back to the game. I stood in the dark for a long time. I didn't cry. I just filed it away, the way you file something you know you'll need later. When I turned 18, the help stopped completely, like a faucet being shut off. There was no conversation about it. Spencer was 10 and getting tutors and a trip to Spain. I got a graduation card with $40 and a note from Diane saying I was so independent and would be just fine because I always landed on my feet. I packed 2 bags and left that town. That is where the sad part of the story ends. Because I refuse to be a victim, even for the people who try to make me one. I got a job building house frames. I was the only woman on the crew for 2 years. I learned to use a hammer all day and read blueprints at night at the local college. I found out I loved building things that lasted. By the time I was 34, my company, Bright Frame, had 110 people working for me and was worth more money than I ever said out loud. I did it alone. No family helped. No rich relative opened any doors. Just years of quiet, unseen work. But I have to be honest about something I'm not proud of. Every good year I had, I sent the Albright something. Gift baskets at Christmas. Money to help Spencer buy a car. When Raymond mentioned their heater was loud one winter, I paid for a new one. I told myself I was being generous. The truth was sadder than that. I was still trying to buy a seat at a table that was never mine. I was still that girl hoping that if she gave enough, someone would finally say she belonged. Nobody ever said it. I just kept working late, while the people I wanted to love me didn't notice. 6 weeks before the party, a thick envelope arrived at my office. My name was written on it in Diane's careful handwriting. Sophie Albright, not Fowler. Inside was a gold-lettered invitation to Raymond's 65th birthday at a country club in the town, where I had learned to act like I didn't matter. I read it twice and placed it face down on my desk like something that might burn me. 2 days later, Brenda called. She was Raymond's younger sister, the only person in that family who had ever treated me like a real person. She used to give me the best cookies when I was little and call me kiddo. She asked me what I was really thinking when nobody else bothered to ask. She told me Raymond was turning 65 and that people got nicer as they got older. Maybe it was a chance to fix things. I decided to go, but not for the right reasons. The honest version is that I went to win. I wanted to be so undeniably successful that they would have to change what they thought of me. And I had an idea. Loon Lake. Raymond had driven us past that house every Sunday afternoon when I was a child, slowing down so everyone could look. It was a big stone house on the water with a boathouse and 11 acres and the best stretch of private beach in the county. Diane would say someday, and Raymond would say when my ship comes in. They wanted it their whole lives, and the math never worked. Now it was for sale. The old owner had passed, and his children listed it at $4 million. I could buy it without difficulty. I told myself I was doing it for him. But somewhere underneath that, I knew I was spending $4 million, hoping to finally hear someone say I was theirs. I bought the house through my foundation, Open Door, which I had started 2 years earlier after a young woman who worked for me had to leave foster care at 18 with nothing but 2 trash bags. The paper was drawn up to transfer Loon Lake to Raymond and Diane as a gift, free and clear. I held it at my kitchen table on a Sunday night and waited to feel something warm. I had spent $4 million, and the warmth wasn't there, just that old folding chair against the backs of my legs. I called Brenda, and we met for coffee. I told her I wasn't sure why I wanted to give him something so large anymore. She stirred her coffee and asked me what I hoped he would do when I gave it to him. I wanted to say something graceful, but the truth came out instead. I told her I hoped he would finally say I was his daughter. She nodded slowly. She said he wouldn't. She said Raymond hadn't changed in 60 years, and a big house wouldn't fix him. Then she put her hand on mine and said not everyone who shared his last name was like him, and asked if I knew that. I was starting to. The proof came at a dinner the week before the party. Diane invited me to the house to talk about the plans. The folding chair was already set out in the corner before I even took off my coat. Spencer pulled it out for me with theatrical bow, called to my throne, and Diane laughed and told him not to be silly without ever asking someone to get me a real chair. Spencer mentioned that their father had been working on his toast for weeks, and Diane gave him the look people give when they're keeping a secret. I drove home thinking about that smirk and what joke was waiting for me on Saturday night. The next morning, Brenda called early and sent me a screenshot of the family group chat she'd been added to by mistake. I read it while my coffee went cold. Spencer had written asking if the charity case was really coming. Diane had replied telling him to be nice. That Sophie looked good in the photos and made them look generous in front of the club. Spencer had asked whether I was in the will. Raymond had answered not to worry, that he would make it official on Saturday. It was time everyone knew where things stood. I put the phone down carefully. I felt very quiet. The same quiet I feel right before solving a large problem at work. I looked at the house paper in my bag, and I knew exactly what I was going to do. I called my lawyer on a Saturday morning and told him to take Raymond and Diane's names off the document. Loon Lake would go to the Open Door Foundation permanently, to be turned into a home for kids aging out of foster care with nothing but trash bags. He finished the new paper that afternoon. We signed it with a witness Saturday morning. By 9 o'clock, it was recorded with the county, and nothing could change it. I had my lawyer print one copy for me, folded it, and put it in my purse. Then I drove to the club with steady hands for the first time in a very long time. The room was full of everyone Raymond wanted to impress. A gold banner read 65 and never better. There was an ice sculpture and a cake with 65 candles. Diane found me immediately and steered me toward women near the bar, announcing our Sophie to everyone in earshot, using me like a prop the way she always had. Then she led me to the main table where 5 chairs had gold bows on them and 1 metal folding chair sat at the end near the kitchen doors, a small car in front of it that just said Sophie. She whispered that they'd run out of good chairs. I smiled at her, a real smile, because I knew something she didn't. When Raymond finally tapped his glass and took the microphone, he worked through his speech with ease. He toasted Spencer as the future. He talked about his insurance business and how he built it from nothing, leaving out that he inherited it from his own father. Then he looked at me with the expression of a man about to deliver his best line, and he lifted his glass and said he'd been fixing the will, and his lawyer had asked about Sophie, and here was the truth, no hard feelings. She wasn't really his. He just forgot to cross her name out. The room erupted. Spencer laughed the loudest. Diane had her hand on her chest, and I stood perfectly still, because for the first time in my life, I understood they could not hurt me anymore. I set my glass down quietly. I picked up the folding chair and leaned it against the wall. Then I walked to the main table. Without hurrying, the room went silent as I reached into my purse, unfolded that single sheet of paper, and laid it flat on the white tablecloth so everyone could see it. I told him happy birthday. I told him I had brought a gift and that since he had just told everyone what he thought of me, I was going to tell everyone the rest. 3 weeks ago, I said I bought Loon Lake, the house on the water, the one he used to drive us past when I was small, while he talked about his ship coming in. I bought it with cash. I had a paper made to give it to him and Diane as a gift, and I was going to hand it over tonight in front of everyone. Then I picked up the paper and tore it in half. The sound in that silent room was very loud. I tore it again and again and let the pieces fall in front of his cake. I explained that was only a copy. The real document had been signed and recorded that morning with the county and could not be changed. Loon Lake did not belong to Raymond. It never would. As of that morning, it belonged to my foundation, and we were turning it into a home for kids who had to leave foster care with nothing. They would get the lake house. They would get the boathouse. He would get to read about it in the newspaper. Raymond reached out with both shaking hands and began trying to fit the torn pieces back together on the table. Nobody helped him. When he found the words Loon Lake and read that the house belonged to the foundation, all the color left his face. He looked very old. His mouth opened and nothing came out. Diane stood and began crying for the audience, saying after everything they'd done for her, how could she be so cruel on her father's birthday? Spencer shouted that the house should have been theirs and that I had to fix it. He wasn't grieving his father. He was grieving the money. Raymond never stood up. He just sat there looking at the pieces. For one moment, he looked up at me and said my name in a voice that had gone very small, and he reached his hand partway toward me. He knew what he had lost. Then Diane said his name like a command, and he looked away. He chose her the way he always had. I didn't yell at any of them. There was no reason to. I picked up my purse and told Raymond I had spent my whole life trying to get him to want me. I had bought things and tried to earn a love that was never offered. Tonight, he had told everyone who I was to him, so I was going to believe him. He could keep those torn pieces. I had already kept the part that mattered. Then I turned and walked out. Brenda was waiting at the door with tears on her face. She put her hand on my arm and whispered that she was proud of me. I walked out into the cool night air, and I didn't look back. The folding chair stayed against that wall. The following spring, Loon Lake opened its doors. We had fixed it up so it used almost no energy and would cost nearly nothing to heat through a Michigan winter. 8 bedrooms, a big kitchen, a long dining table I built myself in my own shop, and 7 matching chairs. On the first night, 6 teenagers moved in. A girl named Tasha, who was 18, was standing by the kitchen door, looking like she was waiting to be told to take the lesser seat. I pulled out the chair at the head of the table, the one with the best view of the water, and told her this one was hers. She didn't believe me at first. Then she sat down and looked at the lake and smiled. There is not a single folding chair in that house. There never will be.